Good evening. It's the 13th of July, 7:31, and we are ready to begin our work session. And let's say the pledge, and then we can get started. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the
United
republic
States of America,
for which it stands,
to the republic for which it
one
stands,
nation,
one
under
nation,
God,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
justice for all.
I'm laughing because wasn't as coordinated as it usually is. Hey, Paul. Okay, Stuart, hello. Hello, everybody. All right. So, we're calling the meeting to order. Are there any announcements? I know it's a work session, but anybody have any announcements? Okay, I'm going to simply say that earlier today, Trustee White, Trustee Lopez, and I had the honor and pleasure at the courthouse to welcome, initiate, etc., 6 new police officers, and it was just joyful. It was a packed house. We had not been in the courtroom, we think over 2.5, it could be 2.5 years. It's north of 2 years, we think we decided. We saw new chairs, the new carpeting, all good stuff. And it was just really actually fun to see all the families and just be there. Very excited. And I thank Trustee Lopez. I can't remember if there was another trustee also involved in interviewing. Am I missing someone? I don't want to leave anybody out. No, and also helping with the interviewing process. We hire folks locally. We hired, I believe, 2 officers off of the Spanish list, and we hire locally. And just meeting the families, there was a lot of pride. There was a gentleman, a young man, I guess, who is from Peru, and he immigrated in his teens, and now here he is, a police officer. His parents could not be prouder. It was just lovely. So hopefully we got some good pictures to share with the community. That's really all I had to say. So looking at gallery, everybody is good. Oh, and we did have a 50-year anniversary of service for 2 of our fire department firefighters at Hollow's company. That was also fun. We did that with proclamations. So yes, we'll put that in also on social, etc., to share that with the community. All righty, ready to get started. Village manager.
Good evening, everyone. So first on our agenda, we have our village engineer, Paul Fraioli, and our superintendent of water, and Matisse. They're here to discuss their request for a proposal for work being done to the Lakeville Water Tower.
Thanks, Karen. Good evening, Mayor and Board. Thanks for having us tonight. So as you know, last year sometime, maybe a couple of years ago now, we embarked on a process when selecting some of our consultants to take advantage of the best value practice. So in discussing our need to continue our water tank maintenance program, inclusive of repainting, Andy and I have presented for Karen's review and Stuart's review, and we're bringing it to you tonight, a template for a request for proposal to secure the services this year, engineering services and design services this year, to do the tank rehabilitation of the 1.5 million gallon Lakeville water storage tank. For those of you who don't know, that tank is located in the town up off the Minkle Road neighborhood. And it's one that has not been completed yet, as opposed to the ones that were completed within, I'm going to say, most of your tenures here. I'm not sure the exact timeline of everybody on the board, but more recent than not, we did the Pleasantville Road tanks right off Pleasantville Road by Wishney Park. Those are similar tanks in construction. They're standpipe. And then a little before that, we did the Tortview tank, which is a tower an elevated water tower type tank. So that's a little bit different, required a little bit different nuances to rehabilitate that tank. This is also a standalone tank as opposed to Pleasantville Road, which is a side-by-side tank. So some of the logistics and some of the things necessary in the project description, which I think you were provided in the draft RFP that's being reviewed internally right now before we send it out, are what we're looking to do. As if you remember, during the capital budget, we budgeted, and Andy, correct me if I'm wrong with some of these numbers, I have $400,000 for the engineering services, for the design, for the documents to do the rehabilitation on this tank. And keep in mind, it's not just painting. I don't want to go over all the detail tonight, but it is listed in the RFP. But and even the painting itself is a very elaborate process, as you remember. But there's other items on here. This is in the middle of a residential neighborhood, so there's significant site work component to this job as well. So we can stay neighborly, and the residents who really are left with the aesthetic of this water tank will be very happy. We maintain it well now, but after this program, it will be even a better neighbor. That said, we wanted to retain services for a contract for a consultant that would include design services this year, and then construction management services next year, where we will borrow the balance of the anticipated cost for this tank. I'm not going to steal all Andy's thunder. I know he included some of our historical budgets in what he's going to talk about now, and is going to go into a little bit of the detail on what it takes to rehabilitate this tank that, again, like all of our water distribution and plant projects, are done under the administrative approvals of the Westchester County Health Department, and in some cases, depending on what we do, the state health department. But this is strictly a county health department program. Andy?
Thanks. So yes, as Paul mentioned, it's a 1.5 million gallon tank. Obviously, prices have gone up since 2018. Just a little history of what we've paid to have these tanks rehabilitated in the past. Pleasantville Road tanks, both tanks, that's 3.83 million. That was roughly a little over $3 million for that job. That was back in 2007. And then the Torbank tank, which is 500,000 gallons, which is up 130 feet in the air, that was like $600,000 and change. So at one time, it was basically, you take the volume of the tank, if it's 1.5 million gallon tank 10 years ago, you would budget roughly 1.5 million, and you would have to take in account for any changes like the metal work that needs to be done, roof hatches that need to be installed, venting, cathodic protection. That's a special system that prevents the tank from decaying, that kind of stuff. But what's come in now, we've budgeted way more than the 1.5. And I don't want to really talk about the numbers that we budgeted, but comparing jobs that just came out recently, Westchester County bid 2 tanks, 2 1 million gallon tanks, so 2 million gallons of storage, and that came in at $3 million. So these numbers are going up with inflation costs, with labor costs, and we'll have to bid it, and we'll go from there. We're going to pick the best engineering firm who gives us the best value. It is pretty detailed in what's required. Many different tests are required so that you don't put out water and water that has VOCs in it. And there's ground testing to make sure that there's not lead in the ground before and after around the tank site. This tank was last rehabilitated in 1998. There should be no lead paint on that tank. But previous to that, in 64, there was most likely lead in there. So not in the tank. The tank had lead paint, but around the construction area, it would have been tested and everything would have been remediated correctly in 1998. So we're required every 5 years, as per DOH, to have a company come in and inspect these tanks. And they came in 2018, a company out of Pennsylvania who specializes in this, and they made recommendations. And one of the key things that they brought up is that the flange around the whole tank, the tank is, the diameter's big, has deteriorated from like 2.5 inches to 1 inch. So it's kind of where it sits on the foundation, the tank itself, it's like a lip around the tank. It's rusting away. So that has to be addressed, and we don't want to wait on it. Most tanks need to be painted every 10 to 15 years. This is over 20 years. This is 1998, 24 years. They said it was one of the best paint jobs they've ever seen out of all of our tanks, that since it's lasted this long, but it is time to address it. And when I did get the report in 2018, that's why we put it off a couple of years, because it was in better condition than we thought, but the ring needs to be addressed, and next year would be the time. I know that there were just placeholders for dates to do the work, but what I would like to do is pick the engineering firm as soon as possible and get this design and get it to the health department, because they are lacking on lead times. So we need to get that approved ASAP. But the other thing too is our window of doing the work is April until like when it freezes, in November sometime. And this is going to require putting 2 trailers in the system. The fire department will have to be notified that we don't have the capacity that we normally have. We always do this when we work on a big tank. And these 2 trailers will be pressurized, and we will run that mid system off of pumps that are existing and pressure tanks. And we did that last time with Torbank, and it worked great. And Paul had mentioned our tanks are clean. We do try and clean the tanks every 3 years. We just think it's best practices, and because there's quite a few trees around our tanks, it causes decaying faster. So I don't know any other questions you might have, but you can shoot if you want.
Let me just add two things to what Andy said. He put it a little delicately there when he talked about the health department review. Everything that our water filtration plant has been extremely delayed. We anticipate this happening here with this review, so that's why we're going out now for the engineers, opposed to waiting to the end of the year. And we want to get this application into them sooner than later, so we really can have this thing awarded in the spring and commence with work during the appropriate weather. So that's why we're in front of you tonight. The second thing is just to draw on folks' memory, because I know a lot of you attended the last Westchester chapter, the American Water Works. The presentation that was offered that night, although that wasn't actually an elevated water storage tank, but the scope performed on that water tank that was part of the presentation on Project of the Year, if you remember that, that's similar to a lot of the things we're going to do here. So, similar in nature, that's the type of consultants we're looking for. That was it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, folks. Questions, comments, thoughts?
I just have one question, I guess, just a general question itself, not specific to this project in particular, but I remember many years ago, before I was even elected, I walked into, I believe it was the first tank that it was painted. And I know some of the trustees at the time, I had a concern about how much it was going to cost just to paint and refurbish that tank. I cannot remember which tank was it, but it was over $500,000. And one of the reasons why was because it had to be union. So going from that, I want to say, well, 10 years ago, close to 10, yeah, over 10 years ago. So are we up to date? Will this be the last tank that we have to do at this point going forward in regards to maintenance of a big job like this, or how many more are left on the system?
This is the last one in my 18 years we haven't completed. But the next one to be worked on will be Torbank, and Torbank was done in 2007 or 2010. But as you remember, you guys approved the mixers that we did last year for the THMs and HAAs in all 3 tanks. Well, at that time, we put in the bid to repaint the top of Pleasantville Road tank, which was deteriorating pretty bad. Inside, it looked great. So this is something that every 5 years, which actually in 2023, we're gonna have to do another run of going through all the tanks with the diver or the robot system that we used last time. But it's constant. Every municipality, because of the harsh nature of the chlorine that's involved, they deteriorate, and it's ongoing.
So is it fair to say, sorry, Andy, so is it fair to say pretty much every 5 years, we're gonna be doing some sort of maintenance to the tanks?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
One thing you said, Trustee Casada, I think I understood you. You were breaking up a little, but you made reference to the union component of the work on the contracts. I can
Correct.
tell you that it must have made its way out that we're looking to embark on another tank painting project, because we did have a little back and forth with the union during the Pleasantville Road program, and the contractor and the local painters union for this region worked out an agreement outside of the village's involvement. That's the contractor's right to do that, and the union can certainly solicit that. It did not really interrupt the flow of the program, and it didn't cost us any more money. But about a month ago, when Andy and I started to talk about doing this project out there on the market, I actually did have a visit from the painters union again. They came to visit me in the office, and I simply said what I said back then. I said again now, that the village has prevailing wage in all their contracts, just like any municipal contract and any municipality does. We don't put unions wages, we put prevailing wages into our contracts, and that's how we bid our jobs, like everybody else. If it happens to be a union, so be it. If it's not, so be it. That's not our concern or our issue.
Thank you for that clarification. That is correct. That was part of my recollection way back then as well.
I'll go next. Paul, Andy, thank you so much for the update. Can you tell me what made that 1997 or 1998 paint job so good? And can we do that again this time, so that, not that we have to wait 20 plus years again, but to maintain that quality of service?
Yeah, the technology changed in the materials. And back then, those were the first years of a anemic paint. It's a type of paint coating process that can handle the elements better. And that's in fact what we've used on the other two tanks since then. So, and also in the report that I got in 2018, it was listed that they put a very thick coat in the tank. So that's part of the engineering firm to go and measure the coat thickness and to make sure it meets qualifications. And it was pretty impressive.
That's all for me. Thank you.
Okay, then. I don't see any other folks looking like they want to chime in. What's our action here? What's the request? It's an update, but is there something that we need to do tonight?
Not tonight. There'll be a resolution next week authorizing the issuance of the RFP.
Okie dokie. Village Manor, thank you, gentlemen. Karen?
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Good
Good
night.
night,
Thank-
Paul and Andy.
Good night. Thank you.
Next, our treasurer, Dale Brennan, will be on for two items. One, we had sent the board a memo detailing the estimated tax certiorieries and we'll need a resolution next week to approve them, and then also a discussion of budget adjustments for fuel and heating oil lines, which we will also need so that will be two resolutions on the table next week to make the appropriate allocations for these line items.
Great. Thank you, Manager Vittori. Good evening, Mayor and Board. In my memo, I kind of reviewed, again, the tax certiorari process. We've actually gained another one since I had written this memo. So we will be offering up 3 tax cert refund resolutions, one for Scarborough Manor, one for West First Management, and one for Highland Terrace. We will be proposing those for resolution and also put them on for payment, although because right now these tax certs have a refund year for the 2022 taxes if they have not paid their second half installment, which is due by July 31st, just throwing that out there. Village taxes due July 31st. I will hold off and put them through for payment on the August 3rd board meeting. Currently this year, we looked like we were going to be under budget for tax certs, but then a flurry has been arriving. We have not been served with a few, but they will be forthcoming in a few weeks. So we will be returning with proposed resolutions for those. What Stuart and I and Manager DeTore and Mandy Zahach had discussed was changing the process a little bit for our tax cert refunds. Currently, right now, we are not going to the board to bring forward a tax cert until we're actually served. In essence, at that point, when we are served, it already starts the clock that we only have 60 days in order to go to the board, discuss it, and then bring it back to the board again for a resolution and payment. What we would like to do is follow along more in how the town does the process. At the point that the town approves a tax cert resolution, and then it is going to be submitted to the court, we would like for the village to, at that point, do a tax cert resolution. The benefit of this is that it will give us more time in order to get it onto an agenda and talk about it before it actually comes back, because the processing time from it going to the court and then getting served back on the village and the town, the shortest I've seen is 3 months. So it gives us a bigger window in order to do the process, and that way, you know, the agendas are so very busy and we don't want to crunch it in. We want to be able to have enough time and be able to talk about it. The only drawback might be if we're doing a resolution in the 2022 year. We do not have the 2023 year yet, but that might end up being added at that point, that we are then ready to pay it, for which I would like to talk to Stuart about how do we cover ourselves in that instance. And we could always provide to the board each time we are physically paying a resolution, so that you can keep track as well as us. Like I do now, I have a master schedule that every time we pay something, I put it in to the schedule so that we know where we stand during the year. Any questions on that?
Nope. Anybody?
No, that
Comments,
makes sense
questions?
for you guys. Yeah, to me, whatever helps you Dell and everybody else on staff to work that, I'm okay with that. So thank you.
Thanks, Dale.
Great.
Much appreciated.
No, thank you.
Village manager?
Okay, proposed local law.
Oh, hang on just
Oh.
1 second. Dale has her second
Oh,
agenda item.
Dale, I'm sorry. You just gave so much. I just realized I was reading that. So the second portion of our treasurer's presentation is budget adjustments for fuel and heating oil lines the budget given rising costs.
Great. So we touched on this during our mid-year review. So this is really a follow-up to that discussion in order to make sure that our budgets will not be overdrawn, hopefully, if my methodology works out, of projecting for the end of the year. I provided a list of budgetary accounts for our diesel, our unleaded, and our heat lines to be increased, and they're being increased from a couple of areas, either contingency or increasing revenue lines that are definitely, in the one case, it was the sale of surplus equipment for almost $70,000. So we will, it's a one-time revenue. So we'll be doing a one-time budget adjustment to increase that. And our sales tax distribution first quarter amount came in over the budgeted amount, and the second quarter is projected at an 18% increase over last year. So we should be well within, if not over budget, for our sales tax revenue for 2022. So I provided the list right now for diesel fuel. We're projecting a balance of 77,000 to be increased, unleaded 99,000, and for our heat line 63. So I'd like to bring that budget adjustment forward as well.
Okie dokie. And comments?
Thank you, Dale.
Thank you, Dale.
Thank you.
Waiting for you, Karen.
I'm here. Next up is proposed local law 9 of 2022, and these are revisions to chapter 250 of vehicle and traffic, or vehicle and traffic code. So this really talks about the follow-ups on the municipal and train station parking lot discussion that we've been having, and ways to create more flexibility with daily parking down at the train station, and also enhance residential parking with overnight parking. So I would like to turn this over to Corporation Counsel Stuart Kahn and Assistant Village Manager Maddie Zahat.
Thank you, Karen. Good evening, folks. What this local law is not might be said first. It is not an overhaul of overnight parking. That will come in a later iteration. So we're not dealing with overnight parking, except to the extent that some of these municipal lots will allow for overnight parking, and some of the railroad station lots will allow for overnight parking. And but what this proposed local law has, and again, my great thanks to Maddie for sort of bearing with all my numerous questions on this. We've included a definition of commercial vehicles at the very top of the code rather than bury it. The main change first comes with section 250-30. Before, if you may recall, the railroad station lots were identified by area numbers 1 through, I think it went 1 through 10. We've combined that, and instead of using area numbers, we now, the designation that I have here, and that's obviously subject to what the board thinks and wants to do, would be we have the lower Main Street lot, the east parking field, the Barlow Lane lots, Quimby Street East, Quimby Street West, west of Westerly Road, and I think that's an east of Water Street and the old Broadway extension. Some of those are from the old, but the new, so we're not using areas. We're sort of doing it this way. We've combined a lot of section block and lots. To this, I want to thank both Jaime and Jamie Kane, who took the old block and plate numbers and were able to give me the current section, block, and lot so we can compare and contrast. This was particularly important because it is what we're now going to call, if the board agrees, the Quimby Street East lot, and that is the lot across the street from 30 Water Street, or for want of a better address, what is we would call 31 Water Street. That is the lot where it's going to be basically, if I remember, Maddie, that's the one where people can park, they'll get a day permit essentially to park there. And the Quimby Street West lot, which is essentially Quimby Street on the west side of the railroad tracks, that will be parking, and that will be actually hourly parking. And you can do it even 24 hours a day if you want to. There will be spaces there to do that. But all of these will be railroad station parking. But two of the particular areas that I mentioned, Quimby Street East and West, will actually be will not be the permit. They will be either day parking where you can do that, or the 24-hour. The important thing with the Quimby Street East is that on the off or evening hours, that will be overnight parking essentially for residents in the area. We know we've gotten a lot of complaints from folks in the area that there is insufficient parking down there. This will open up that lot, Quimby Street East, to the folks who are in the Lower Main and Lower Water Street areas to allow them for parking. As I'll go into, and as we discussed before, the current railroad station parking on Central Avenue will be discontinued. That will become overnight parking, obviously overnight, and during the day, that will be parking for employees at businesses along Main Street. That's what we're now designating as Central Avenue Municipal Linear Parking Lot. So that's with regard to the railroad station lots. Again, they will still be annual permits for everyone who gets a permit. The fee will be set by the board. The fee for the Quimby Street East for the hourly, we'll want to keep that consistent with or daily, consistent with what is charged by LAS, which is the Metro North company that runs their parking spaces, which go along the train tracks on the west side. So we'll be consistent with that so that one won't essentially favor the other. We've also worked on section 250-31, which is the municipal parking lots. And like the railroad lots, those lots were also denominated by numbers. And the thought was to change that to basically identify it based upon where they are. So for example, where we are at the municipal building, that would be the municipal building parking lot. You'd have a State Street lot, which is essentially where OFD headquarters is located. And that lot, while it is a municipal lot, will only be for OFD or municipal employees. Maddie and I are working out some sort of tag system that we will be able to use so that if you are not an identified vehicle and you park there, you will be subject to getting a ticket for parking at that location. The exact mechanism we're trying to work out, it's in the code now that there will be some designation. So specifically the people who are parking there are allowed to park there, whether it be through a license plate or something else, that's what we're going to have. But the municipal lots include, it'll be State Street parking, Broadway parking north, the Spring and Main Street west parking, the Spring and Main Street east parking, Broadway south, Brandreth Street, North Highland East, Croton Avenue, Eastern Avenue, Waller Avenue South, Waller Avenue North, St. Paul's, and the new Central Avenue Municipal Linear Lot, which used to be the Central Avenue lot for railroad station parking. And so that's really just changing the names. But if instead of telling someone that they're parked in lot 2, lot 3, lot 8, they'll now know we'll put signage up, which will indicate the specific lots and where they are. Section 250-32, which is parking time limits in designated lots, has been slightly revised because, as we've discussed with the board before, the 2 Spring and Main Street lots we will be changing the times. I think those are lots 5 and 6, which you might know them as now. So the times will change slightly there to allow for parking. Also, a number of these lots do permit basically overnight parking, or do permit longer parking periods. That's not necessarily being changed, but again, we have to work some of those things out. I mentioned to you before that with regard to Central Avenue, those lots, and Maddie gave me the information just before the meeting, there will be 32 available spaces. Those spaces will be overnight parking, obviously overnight, but during daytime, and this will be 7 days a week, that will be parking available to employees of businesses along Main Street, because it's another complaint we've got is that the employees literally don't have a place to park. This will afford them the opportunity to do that. There are a few changes to the tag. Well, one thing is we no longer have tags. So where we refer in 250-33 to tag parking and fees, that's now going to be simply called permit parking and fees, because there is no tag that will be displayed on your vehicle any longer. Everything, as it's said in here, will be based upon license plates. And the LPR, the license plate readers, will be used. They will do, and from that, if you are legally parked, you're fine. If not, you'll get a ticket. That will be the way. There'll be nothing that you will either put on a hang tag or that you will post on the side of your car, which will make it a lot easier when there are parking violations, because we don't have to have someone come in and say, well, I had a parking sticker, because there will be no parking stickers anymore. That will all be changed. The last change that the code has is not directly related to the parking, but it is something that came up in our discussions with the folks from Complus who handle our parking programs. They have been rolling out with the village something called their client portal. And one of the things that is needed is a way of increasing fines for parking tickets where an individual has simply not responded to the ticket. It cannot be based upon conviction, which is what we actually have in subsection A here. So we've rewritten it so that if the person has not responded for 30 days after the ticket is issued, which will be the important thing. Actually, we have it here. If no response for 45 days from the date of issuance, the fine then gets doubled. If there's no response for 60 days, the fine is tripled. And if it's no response for 90 days, the fine would be quadrupled. And again, those dates and how you want to deal with the fines, that's really up to you. The important thing is it has to go from issuance date, because that's the way that the program will work. It cannot go from conviction date. But one important thing is this: if there's no response within the period of time, but then the person decides they want a trial, we will stop the clock. We're not going to basically keep doing it. This is just for folks who have not responded to tickets. And if you've ever been in parking court, you would be surprised at the number of people who simply don't respond to the tickets. So this actually is, and I should also point out, this only relates to violations under the village code. This does not relate to violations under the vehicle and traffic law. So this is a village. So if someone violates the village code for any parking, they would then see their tickets increased, as I have it here, 45, 60, and 90 days. And 90, basically, some municipalities just do it at 30 and let's say 60. Some do it the 3 ways we have it here, but the Complus program doesn't allow them to go beyond that. So that's really what it would be. But it is something that folks would be notified that essentially you don't respond, you're going to see your fines go up. And it should be pointed out that if there is no response, our code already provides that effectively can be treated as a guilty plea, and a judgment can be entered against that individual, which can then be recovered in civil court. So those are the the revised provisions, local law, I mean, chapter 250 is fairly lengthy, particularly if you consider all of the schedules. It comes to about, I think about a little over 100 pages. But this is just about a 10-page revision here dealing specifically with railroad station parking, municipal parking, permit parking, and fines for non-responsiveness to parking tickets. One other thing I forgot to mention, we did also put in a revision with regard to holidays so that we are now consistent with what the federal government has for holidays. So the holidays that will now be recognized, and this is important for Complus when they are programming tickets, because we had this issue recently. The holidays will be New Year's Day, MLK Day, President's Day, Memorial Day, Juneteenth, Independence Day, Labor Day, Columbus Day, Veterans Day, Thanksgiving Day, and Christmas Day. Those are slightly different than the state holidays. They are also slightly different than the village holidays, but we felt that it was best to just follow what the federal government has as their days. This way we can notify Complus so that a ticket won't be issued, for example, on Juneteenth, as unfortunately happened to a few folks this year. In future years, they'll know that Juneteenth is simply not a day that it can be issued, and that will make things a lot easier. But this will specifically list the holidays. What we're doing is we're taking out Lincoln's birthday and Washington's birthday, and instead substituting for that MLK Day and President's Day, and we've also added, as I said, Juneteenth. All of those being federal holidays. And that's it. Maddie and I are both here, and any questions, we're happy to answer.
Yes, Stuart, I have a question about the headquarters lot. 'Cause I think
Yep.
in the past, it's been a snafu where they would write a ticket and there was no code number or whatever to reference the ticket to. Is that going to be taken care of, or am I being misinformed?
Well, no, what we will be doing, Trustee Fritchie, is if someone is parked in this, what we'll call a State Street lot,
Mhm.
and is not authorized to park there, and that's either by virtue of we have a license plate for the people who should be there, or we have hang tags for the people who should be there, that vehicle will get ticketed. And they will get ticketed because it is a violation because they're parking in a municipal lot where they're not permitted to park.
Okay. All right.
How we're actually going to do that, because I recognize that it's possible that any member of OFD may park there. So
Right.
the question is, do we have all those license plates, or do we have, hang tags that perhaps, just a thought right now is hang tags could be made available at OFD headquarters and could be handed out at the time if people are coming in to just
Right.
temporarily put on their cars. So that's something we have to work out. But if someone is found to park there and is not to be parking there, they will then, OPD will know it and they'll be able to write a ticket.
And that's 24/7, correct?
That's 24/7 at that lot, correct?
Okay. Because we
And,
we have habitual people in there, and I got called the other day by the chief. We have the signs out there, and he doesn't want to tow people, even though the sign says they can be towed. He just wants, they can write a ticket. I guess in the past, there was nothing that the police had anything to, or a code or anything to write the ticket to, so it would stick. I guess that's what.
I will make sure that there is a specific section they can write it, but it's similar to someone parking improperly in a municipal lot. Effectively, you're going to get a ticket for that, and we can issue for that. But I think the bigger problem is, how do you know whose car is whose? So this way, we will, once OPD knows whose car is appropriately there, by process of elimination, the other one should not be there, and they can be, and they will be ticketed.
Okay.
And is that only specific to that lot?
Well, the reason that's a specific lot, Mayor, is that lot, even though it's designated as a municipal lot, is only for OFD or employees. It is not a lot which is open to the public.
Right, but if you give tags to people who can park there, that's the only lot they can park in, correct?
Uh,
Yeah.
With those tags.
with
Yes.
those tags,
That's what I meant, yes.
correct. For
Okay.
example, I mean, we have tags here at 16 Croton. So, but with regard to at that location, that tag will be available there. The code is now written, actually has provisions for a firefighter's tag and for employees tag. Probably a lot of that, I think I've taken a lot of that out because it's
Good.
going to just be surplus, but that will be worked out.
Yeah, and
Okay.
you know, there is a section of the code right now that does address this. It's you know, potentially could be clearer. Municipal Lot 2 has 40 spaces designated for members of the fire department of the Village of Boston and municipal employee parking. So potentially, you know, the police and parking enforcement officers could be writing tickets under that section of code. But, you know, I did mention to Stuart that we seem to continue to have this problem. So maybe, you know, if there's some language that we could use to sort of underscore.
If we can, if we need to strengthen it, we absolutely will in the next revision.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, questions? Any other questions?
Yeah, I had these sound like good changes, especially the overnight parking on Quimby Street East. And the reason it's called Quimby Street East is that Quimby Street used to go through what is now a parking lot, used to be Quimby Street,
Right.
right? There's no street there, it's a parking lot. But it used to go all the way across the tracks. Anyway, I'm just saying, I had to remind myself of that because I was always like, why is it called Quimby Street lot? Oh yeah, because Quimby Street used to be there. But how are we going to notify the public of all these changes? How can we make sure people know about them? I guess we'll do our, you know, in our mayor's messages, we'll get out, you know, Facebook, all that stuff, but sometimes we make these changes and it takes a while for them to get out to the public, for them to know.
I think, you know, signage is going to be really key. And in many of these examples, the signs are ready, sort of anticipation of these changes, because we have been discussing it for a couple of months. I think, you know, to Stuart's, you know, earlier point, we're putting together sort of a grid that we can share with folks. So have a place on the website, direct people there through social media posts that say, okay, effective such and such a date, here are the new rules, here's every single parking lot and what can happen where in each one. It's, you know, because a lot of the spaces in, you know, several parking lots are going to be kind of multi-use, it might be kind of confusing. So perhaps we can, you know, talk about offering some kind of amnesty period for things that have changed. But, you know, I think we're sort of out ahead of that. We already sort of have a plan of how we're going to make sure it's communicated as clearly and best and widely as possible.
What
What is the effective date?
There is, well, right. The effective date right now would be when the local law is filed, but if the board wants to push back the effective date, that's the board's discretion.
Well, I always like to give people a little time to everything Dana just said and everything that Maddie just said. And when people say I didn't know, I could at least say it went out in 3 different things and 8 different ways and all that. Because in fairness, I do want it to go out in 3 different things in 8 different ways, with a very clear, boldly underlined, bolded date, effective date. I know that many people don't read things carefully until they get a ticket. They're gonna always say, I didn't know. But I think in all honesty, we want to make a serious effort. So I would go with at least a 30-day. You know, there's never the right number. Somebody tells me, how about 35 days? Fine, I don't care. You know, I don't know what the right amount, but a month always feels right to me. Like 30 days.
Mayor, it can then be 30 days after it is filed by the Secretary of State. Generally, it takes 2 weeks to get filed after we send it up to Albany. So effectively, then you're giving somebody 6 weeks.
I don't care.
No, I'm just saying that's what it would work
I'm
out.
okay with that.
And-
I mean,
and-
I don't, more doesn't bother me. I just, you know, I don't care. You know, if I say it's 6 weeks, that's even better. People need time and we need to communicate over and over, and signs. I think you're gonna might consider some color coding. Some signs are confusing, etc. People always make fun in New York City how they do the signs that no one can ever understand, like when you're actually allowed to park in a spot because it's got 4 different signs. But I leave it to you guys to just get that. And we're renaming the lots, correct?
The lots would be renamed.
I think
Yes.
that's a story in of itself, no joke. I can't
And-
tell you how many people ask me for that.
Agree.
And
So
one of the
like-
things
We
that
can
Maddie and
also
I
have-
have,
Sorry,
one of the
Stuart.
things that Maddie and I have talked about is similar, and as an analogy to what the board did with the form-based codes, is to actually put into the code itself the chart so that people can, and it would also be up obviously on web pages or whatever. Quimby Street East, you can do this. I think it is particularly important for the residents in the lower main water to know that there's going to be available parking there. It's going to be important that the business owners along Main Street know that there's going to be parking on Central for their employees. So obviously that, word that, has to get out. Plus the few people, and there aren't many now, who use the Central Avenue parking for Railroad Station have to know that it won't be Railroad Station, so that they're going to park. They'll park, in the the East Field or the West Field or wherever they want. It hasn't been much of a problem recently, but on the rare occasion where someone does that, we want them to know that it's not going to be that. And obviously, signage and information is critical in that regard.
So are we putting new signs with the names of every lot to actually have a name for them?
We haven't really discussed this yet, and I do just want to sort of append to this conversation. I would want to sort of include Paul and DPW, to see, because I know they've been having some delays, on signage
Sure.
and that kind of thing. So, over the next couple of weeks as this progresses to public hearing and whatnot, I would just sort of
Yeah.
like to loop them into the conversation. But
Much
yeah, I think,
appreciated.
that's a big piece of wayfinding that, was discussed in the mobility and parking study.
Because the time you see, I'm sorry, Maddie, I interrupted.
No, that's it. I was done.
By the time you see like lot number, whatever, you're already in the lot. It doesn't really help, like a sign in the entrance or whatever. Also, I'm gonna ask like the obvious question, which I know you're gonna say, of course, we looked into it and it doesn't exist. But I've been to many communities where there are apps that you could, as you get nearer to the community, start looking to see where they are. So why is everybody smiling? Did I say something stupid or?
No, we did sort of look into this, and it sort of, defies belief that would be possible, right? Unless you had a sensor in every single parking spot, which, I guess is possible if you had.
No, it's all over the world.
Right. But what those apps actually do is they're using aggregate data over the past 6 months to make their best guess based on time of day, day of week, time of year, if there's going to be a spot available for you.
No, I wasn't talking that. I wasn't even expecting. I've been to parking lots where I do see the sensors. There are these green lights and red lights. So when you come into a lot, it tells you exactly where there's a spot available. I wasn't going to even suggest, God forbid. I actually was just talking about people knowing where lots are, because I was walking with Karen
Oh, I
today.
see. I'm sorry, Miss.
I don't even know how long I've lived here. How long have I lived here, Karen? We decided about 30 years. Karen and I walked down to 2 Church from 16 Crowd. There's a lot to the left. I always assumed it belonged to the church. I had no idea that was a municipal lot. Honestly, if you park there, you can go to our downtown by in a 2-minute walk. And it just sits there. Okay, I've lived here a long time, did not know that was a municipal parking lot. For all the complaints
Which
about lack
lot
of
is that?
parking
Which lot?
next
Eastern.
to,
Eastern.
yeah,
Oh, by the church, that little one?
next to the church, yeah. I thought it belonged to the church. I didn't, so I don't park there, but people can park there and go to the community center. People can go downtown and to Lucy's and all sorts of places. It's a 2-minute walk to any of those spots. And frankly, if there's traffic in the downtown, it's better to park there, take a little walk, and then you get zoom right up Route 9 to where you have to go. My point is, I didn't know, and I've lived here a long time. So a sign would be great, but something that says these are all our lots, and they're, not whether there's a spot or not, but simply informing people. And also people are visiting others. If people are coming to shop at a store, I think knowing where the lots are instead of driving around to find them, and some of them are sort of slightly hidden. That's really, I was going for the 2002 app. I wasn't going for the 2022 app. I was going for the 2002 app of just telling people where our parking lots are. That's all. Where municipal parking lots are. If you could find something like that, that would be, I think, super helpful to people. I think.
I was thinking the State Street lot, that's a municipal lot, yet it's limited to fire department and village employees, right? Is that really a
Correct.
municipal lot then? I worry it's gonna be misleading.
I called that because technically it's a parking lot that the village owns. So it is a municipal lot. It can, I was debating whether to just pull it out and just essentially not even have it as a lot at all. And just put up a big sign that, unless you are a member of OFD or a village employee, you may not park here. That's the other possibilities. We just
That's
literally
not a
take that
bad
one
idea.
out.
That's not a bad idea because don't even, people can't park there, don't even tell them about it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
To
I
get in,
think
you
it's
need a
about
secret
setting
password.
expectation. I think it's about setting expectations, right? So you do all the stuff, you announce a lot, somebody goes, what the heck? I can't even park here. How's that? But you might want to change that. We may one day or another board decide that employees aren't entitled to their own lot. Like the rest of the world, when they come to work, they should go find their own parking. They're not entitled to parking. A number of municipalities have taken that off the table. So I don't want to handcuff future boards, but I don't think we will be, because we haven't really discussed it. So if it happens, how difficult is it to just add another? Is there a legislative issue with adding? If we take this out of the mix, is there an issue with putting it back in? Does it need a legislative something or other?
Well, you just have to, let me say this, it's easier to take it out than, either way would require a local law, because you'd have to revise the local law. If you take it out and you don't want to designate it that way, that's fine. If you took it out or if you wanted to later put it back in, either would be a revision to the law. Right now, it will be worded that essentially, and I think perhaps signage will help, which will simply say, we don't have to call that, we could say this is, the OFD lot, whatever we want to call it. We don't have to call it anything, we don't have to call it State Street lot. Just it's OFD, OFD employee lot only, something like that.
Yeah,
But
that
I
could be
will
the
say
name.
that the signage that's there now is quite clear. The
I know,
signs
I know.
could not be larger, and
Yeah,
still be
I've
able to
been
hold their
there.
own weight.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. I figured the sign was so clear and large because there are so many problems. That's what I thought when I saw that sign. Okay. All right. Anybody else?
Yes, thank you. So I want to kind of piggyback in the whole conversation, but I just want to kind of make it more like global. Signs are great. Words are great. I think a map, Maddie, you and I had these conversations before. I think a map will solve a lot of the problems in regards to where do I park. I think a map, we have all the data in regards to how many spaces we have on those locations right now. And I want to go a little bit even more into it because I've been doing a couple of research in what zoning maps look like, what other municipalities have done in the past. And one of the things that I have seen is just very similar to what we just did on the update on the comp plan. We start putting graphics into our code, which is very helpful. A lot of people will refer, we'll go back to our code and say, we have a list of streets of overnight parking at some point of time, or just municipal lots. Maybe if we include a map on that as well, that will help or guide people to be like, this is where we park. This is what we do. So I think a map will be very helpful to all our community itself. And I believe it's Stuart, in regards to the municipal or the parking lot in State Street, there was a resolution or there was a change already that this board, not this current board, but the board already passed in regards to that, where it was specific to OPD and OFD employees already. So you may want to double check that.
that's what the code already says.
Yeah.
Code says that.
No, that's what I'm saying. So in regards to that, that's already there and we already have a sign. So I'm not sure what else we need to do except maybe just make it more specific, which I don't know how come we can do more specific than that already. So to me, it's very clear. What we have is clear. That's what I'm saying. So,
Deputy Mayor, I think just to that point, I'm sorry to interrupt. I think, and particularly because this came up this week, so it's sort of fresh in my mind. I think because of the way that the code is written, and this is just the way that it's always been, it's not super intuitive where to look in the code to find that particular parking lot. At least I didn't feel that it was. So perhaps now that it's sort of on our parking enforcement officer's radar, it's on our police officer's radar, where exactly to look in the code to write tickets for that lot, that maybe we'll see a change.
yeah, and I think again, that's something that you and I talked many years ago. Nothing new. Sure, is more like where are the municipal parking lots in the village of Austin? Where can I find? This is the map. This is a huge map where we can find all the municipal parking lots in there, and how many spots do we have? I think and then we can isolate for the downtown, for the central portion of this, and for any area at all. I think will be helpful for a lot of the members of our community. A lot of people are confused in the overnight parking. Just for argument's sake, overnight parking is like, what street do I move my car to? And that's one of the biggest issues for new residents. That being said, Monday I was at the Waterfront. I was in Austin all day, pretty much with my office. In my office, a lot of people from Queens, Brooklyn came over here. We just had an outing, whatever. And I was downtown. I was at the train station, and one of the complaints that I got from one of the businesses, at least, and one of the things that I noticed a lot is people still using the 6, or I don't want to call numbers, but the parking spaces that are allocated for parking for the park in front of Westerly. And I was pretty much there all day, and those cars did not move at all. So we still having issues and had the designation of those parking spaces. So if we want to address parking, the enforcements need to be there. So how do we do that? And
I'm not sure I understand exactly where you mean. I'm sorry. Could you just repeat?
The parking spaces in front of Westerly, the restaurant itself, 3 Westerly.
Right.
There's municipal parking lot, the parking spaces that are supposed to be for people that want to use the park. We have signs in there. So I was there pretty much half of the day, and cars were parked there longer than that. I arrived there, those cars did not move at all.
I think I'll just speak for myself. This is something that maybe I could talk to you offline about further, because I know that there was an issue a couple of years ago with signage, and cars were knocking down the signs. And so I know that there's sort of a problem in that very distinct little area. So maybe we could talk about it separately, but yes, that's certainly something.
But I think that's what I'm saying. I think overall parking it will work great, but it has to go hand in hand with enforcement.
Yes, agree.
I believe the mayor stayed for a few minutes. I'm not sure if anybody else has any comments or questions for staff. Omar, no, you good? Cool. So Stuart, so just next steps, pretty much you're going to bring this into legislation until next week, I'm assuming?
I'd like to have a resolution
Yes.
to call for the public hearing, which I guess then would be the first Wednesday in August. And if we keep to that and we have the public hearing, then the board would hopefully vote to adopt the 3rd Wednesday in August, which would mean it could be, on the books by the end of September.
Got you. And then pretty much what the mayor was referring to, like a 30-day, or you.
Well, what it would be is
more like 6 weeks. It would be.
what it would be, that's right, because ordinarily it would be when on filing is usually within 2 weeks.
Yep.
But we would put it basically, it would say 30 days after being filed with the Secretary of State. So it would give
more or less
that cushion.
Yeah, I want to guess more or less October, more or less.
I think also because we have sort of a funky schedule in August, so I maybe would say, early October is probably more likely.
And whatever, however the schedule works out, folks, is fine. I'll just call for the public hearing next week and we can
All right,
take it from
sounds
there.
good. Thank you, Stuart.
Yep.
Karen, I don't think, if you go to the next topic, please.
Sure.
Sorry
Um,
about that. I was listening to
perfect
the whole
timing.
thing. Oh, sorry about that. I may not have, I'm sorry, I have to step away. I heard the August part. I heard, but did somebody mention that we are not meeting the last 2 sessions of August?
The
Remember
last
we
2
had-
weeks.
The
Yeah,
last
sorry.
3 weeks, actually, I think, because we have.
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wednesday.
sorry about that.
We
Yeah.
wouldn't meet on a 5th Wednesday anyway, but the
Right.
last 2 sessions, we said that we will, I mean, the town does these summer hours. We don't do that in the village, but the last, so I just want to be clear because I was a little bit away when I heard it. Did you take that into account, Stuart? That the
What that
last
would then mean, Mayor, thank you, is that the public hearing would be the first Wednesday in August.
correct?
The vote to adopt would be the first Wednesday in September, which would put your approval probably into the 2nd or 3rd week in October in terms of effective date.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, if there's no public comments for all intents and purposes, if nobody comes and says anything, theoretically, we could open and close on the same evening. We wouldn't have to wait, but be that as it may, I don't think it's a big deal in any case. And I suspect that getting signs together and all of that is going to be like a bit of a lift amongst the many, many things we're working on and staff's working on. So I'm fine with October rollout, no problem. As far as the timeline you just quoted. Okay,
Hey,
Aaron Diatori, you're on.
thank you. Thank you very much. So it's July, and that means it's grant season. The consolidated funding application grants from New York State were issued, and we're looking to primarily augment funding for projects that were identified in the DRI. So 3 of the projects that we're looking for funding for were already identified for funding, but they would still have a significant amount of funding that would have to be borne by the village. So we want to make sure that we're maximizing all opportunities to get additional funding for these projects. So we'd be looking at an Empire State Development Grant for renovations to the Joseph J. Caputo Community Center, which we would be asking for, and CFA allows you to ask for up to 20%, but really 15% of the total project cost probably puts us in a competitive mode. So we're asking for $825,000, $825,563 for exactly, which is 15% of the total estimated cost of $5,500 for, I'm sorry, $55 million, $5.5 million for the community center. And then
We're just gonna have to say that again. The total is 5.5 and you're asking for how much?
825,000 from the CFA
Okay.
grant. And
Got it.
then that's in addition to the $2.5 million from the DRI grant and the $500,000 that has already been committed from the SAM grant.
From the
So,
SAM grant, right?
right. So, and that we got through Sandy Galiff's office. So that would still put us in a, position where we could potentially get more money, but we'd be meeting all the requirements. And as far as the village match, it's money that right now we're committed for anyway with the project. So it just would offset the depth of that commitment. Similarly, for the construction of the multimodal transportation hub, which is our most expensive project, also known as a parking garage with a lot of nice additional multimodal features. That's an $11.7 million job. So we'd be asking for $1,758,000 for that that in addition to the $3 million that we're asking for through the DRI. And then for the third Empire State Development Grant would be for enhancing the Market Square Public Plaza, which was estimated at almost $3.5 million. And we're asking for $523,000 for that project, which would go towards that total cost. And we're already asking $2 million from the DRI on that. So again, this is just a way to hopefully get some more money in to lessen the match we have right now on those projects. So I think that's pretty straightforward. The fourth grant is a local waterfront revitalization program grant. And we do have a local waterfront revitalization plan here in Ossining. This would be to update it and amend it. So that we're estimating would be about, this has a different match requirement, but we're estimating that to be about $125,000. So we're asking for $106,000, which would put us at 85% of that amount. The village contribution on that would then, if we got the grant, if we got it at that amount, would be about $18,000, almost $19,000. So the advantage of updating the local waterfront plan is similar to your comprehensive plan. You know, you periodically update these. Right now, there's an opportunity to look at some of the things that we are talking about through the CAD study, the Cornell study, as well as if we decided at some point to go for funding for pier addition or other improvements to the waterfront, it would make us more competitive because those can be included in the plan. And that would make us more competitive for capital funding for waterfront revitalization initiatives. And those are the 4 grants that we're working on. So we will need board resolutions to make sure that we can, commit to the match. Right now, essentially, we've sort of committed to these matches through the DRI for the grants that will supplement those projects. So in addition, we'd be committing to a match of about $19,000 for the update on the local waterfront revitalization plan.
Did you see the note from Senator Reichlin Melnick that came out today? Sam is now at the Crest. Did
Yes.
you see all that? Okay.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
we're looking at that too. So.
Well, there are a lot of grants because of the way the government is changing the way, well, New York State government. So that's good for us. Just want to make sure, but this is not what you're talking about. This is different stuff. Okay. All good.
Okay, any other questions?
No, just good luck.
No, yeah, I think infrastructural, if you can get a lot of grants of that, I mean, one of the major buildings that at least we haven't talked about in a while is the op center. Hopefully at some point we start getting some grant so we can do some improvement, maybe an elevator. You never know. It'd be nice. But
It would be nice.
yeah, it would be nice. But again, I see what your focus is on, but I think the op center also has a lot of potential in a lot of things where we can start improving that. So I would like to see some grant opportunity that if we can take advantage of that and put that building into place as well, because I think it's a very important building. It does have a purpose. It does serve a lot of people. Building and planning are there. So I think it will be nice to start focusing in that building at some point of time as well.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I do not believe that anything in the CFA round, because they give a laundry list of grant programs, was specific to the things that we're looking for to do at Op Center. We went through, basically when we look, just so the board knows and the public, there's probably 50 different grant initiatives that come up through this particular program. We review all of them, and whichever ones that we know are aligned with things that are in our capital plan, or we would like to incorporate in our capital plan, we basically go for that funding. If we can, if we think we can be competitive and we can get enough funding to make the project viable. So we will continue to look on that front, and I'm hoping that at some point, some funding for updating buildings for, greater public access because of ADA accessibility and stuff, that becomes more, get more grants in that focus too.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, and not to, I think I left it out, and hopefully, Paul will forgive me. Obviously, DPW is there. We also have the town of Austin in our building department as well is there. So there's a lot of functions, a lot of public engagement. It happens there. Not only that, but we also have planning board, zoning board meetings there as well. So all these components, I think, is essential for us to, again, I'm not saying that we should be doing this right now, but we need to kind of go back 3 years back and kind of start gearing some of that stuff in there. So that's all.
Absolutely.
Yeah, unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know, it depends if you're a taxpayer or the recipient of money, but so few of the loans are for government building enhancements. Even if the truth is exactly as you stated, it's the front line to the public. At the end of the day, it's where the public meets government. It's our police department, our fire department, our ops center, 16. Croton, that's where the public and a lot of seniors, a lot of people that need hand holding, it's just that the way grants are written, there's so few for enhancements of government buildings. I mean, ironically, I
That is
guess.
true.
So I think we do need to look through that. And sometimes, you get equipment, as we know, lighting, better wireless, whatever, but it's really sort of interesting, frankly, that so little actually goes from the government to government buildings where the public meets government, essentially. So, well, let's see, let's keep looking. Let's look at it.
Well, it's another building where optimizing space would be a huge advantage and making
Yeah, it
it
would
more
be.
accessible. So, we will continue to comb through all the opportunities.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff coming down, so maybe we can find something. Okay, Karen, next topic.
That concludes the next topic. We have an executive session to discuss real property, I guess that would be.
Real property, litigation, and a matter of personnel. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so that concludes, I think, ladies and gentlemen, it is.
Mayor, we need a motion to adjourn to
I
exec.
know, I just like to do the time. It's 8:49 on the 13th of July. So can we get well, it's not my role, but let's just say it, motion to adjourn to go into exec for matters of personnel, legal. and real
Personnel,
estate.
legal, and real estate. Is there a motion?
So move.
Second? All in favor?
All right.
Thank you.
Aye.
All right, good night,
Have a
folks.
good night.